As soon as I finished the last page of this memoir, I was going to turn on my camera right then and there and just give my thoughts while everything was fresh in my mind. But how do you do that with someone else's life story? So, my next approach was to split the book in sections and do a deep dive on every chapter. But that didn't feel right either. So, for the last 2 days, I was writing and rewriting my notes. But then I had to remind myself that this was not a fictional character in a novel. And I decided that instead of a book review, I wanted it to feel more like a conversation. There are still some book elements in it, but a conversation nonetheless. So here it goes. Hi, you guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Robin, and this is Robin's Reading Nest. And today, like I said, we will be discussing Brandy's memoir phases. Okay, so really quickly, this memoir is Brandy walking us through different phases of her life, from her rise to fame to her personal struggles and her growth behind the scenes. Now, I'm not here to bash her, critique her, or even debate her version of events as opposed to everyone else's version. I'm just a fan discussing my thoughts. So if you're thinking about picking this memoir up, or you've already read it and needed to talk about it, or you just want to see a review to get the good parts, let's get into it. So, going into this, I was expecting a deep dive on her relationships with Kobe and Usher, maybe some behind the scenes tea from the sets of Moesha and the Game, details on what happened with the car accident. Is there beef between her, Kelly, and Beyonce? And what was written on that note from Whitney? So, to say that I was reading this memoir to be nosy is a fair assessment. But while I was reading, I noticed there were three themes that were prominent throughout the book. I know. You said you didn't want this to be a book review. I don't. But like I said, these three themes kind of carried the book. And the first major one was identity and reinvention. Like, who are you when the world already thinks that they know you? How could Brandy the person separate herself from Brandy the singer? Brandy said herself that there were days where it felt like Brandy and Moesha were one and the same. She also goes on to talk about reinventing herself with each album, and we'll get into that a little bit later. The second theme was fame and pressure, especially with how young she was while navigating all of that. Brandy dealt with issues such as her weight, which would later lead her to becoming bulimic, being bullied for her looks. You know, she was in elementary with the kids telling her that she looked like E.T. She even had a teacher to tell her that she didn't have that Vanessa Williams look. And she also had to deal with the pressure of being on 24/7. The third theme was image, which added a deeper layer to everything she shared. She just couldn't shake that American sweetheart label that was superglued to her forehead. Think about it. It was one of the main reasons why she lied about being married. So now I'm going to talk about a couple of standout moments. I know you said it wasn't going to be a book review, but hey, here we are. Standout moment number one is the elephant in the room which is her relationship with Wanye from Boys to Men. I know you guys have seen the blogs, think pieces, the news articles, the interviews, and the dissertations. So I will not repeat what has already been said, but I feel like Brandy said it best. And I quote, being taken advantage of as an immature teenager and then having it thrown in your face for the next 30 years is a kind of cruelty only reserved for women. The shame ends here, the silence ends here. I was not a fast girl with a crush. I was not a dramatic teenager who couldn't handle rejection. I was not an unstable, obsessive fan. I was a child. He was an adult. And it's time that the world understood the difference. Now, for me, this moment stood out because how many times have we as Black people, and more specifically Black women, heard the term fast being used to describe girls? Meanwhile, there was no word to describe those older men. My next standout moment was about her relationship with Monica, which started as a genuine friendship between two young women, and it eventually became this tug of war, the industry pitting these two against each other. With Clive Davis naming Monica's sophomore album The Boy Is Mine, though it was a smart business decision, it ultimately caused so much friction between these two ladies that it took years for Brandy and Monica to come back to each other. And my last and final moment was her departure from Rodney Jerkins. Like Brandy said in her book, when you think of Janet, you think of Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis. When you think of Aaliyah, you think Timbaland. And when you think of Brandy, you think Rodney Jerkins. Brandy talked about how she felt that her sound was given away. She also talked about being hurt by Rodney basically calling her a has been. Now, those are my words, not Brandy's. When she was told that her and Rodney needed to get back together to capture what they once had, she later realized that it was no longer there. So, now let's talk about how this memoir was actually written. Robin, you keep saying this is not a book review, but you keep saying bookish things. I know, I'm trying. But for me, the writing felt easy to read and was deeply personal. Were there times where I wanted more detail or depth in certain areas? Absolutely. But this is Brandy's story to tell. My job as a fan and a reader is just to listen. It's not about me. This is the life that she has lived, and only she can tell her story best, right? Okay, so overall, how did this book actually land for me? The memoir definitely made me see her a little differently, especially when it comes to her image. Here we have this young girl who was introduced to us at the tender age of 14 on the set of Thea. She then hits our airwaves and our magazine covers as Brandy, this sweet bubblegum girl next door who's wearing her braids. Her name then becomes synonymous with Moesha. She goes on to become this pop diva, this cover girl, and a literal doll, and she's everywhere. To read that while her fans, much like myself, were glamorizing her life, behind the scenes, she was so broken to the point of having a nervous breakdown is really heartbreaking. Now, me personally, I had this image of the vocal Bible etched in my mind, this megastar who was almost otherworldly. It was basically me being a fangirl over the years. But after reading this memoir, I came to realize that she, like the rest of us, is still and will always be human. So I bet you're saying, well, Robin, that's all fine and good. But did she really talk about her relationships with Kobe and Usher? No. Did she spill tea from the set of Moesha? No. Did she talk about her beef between her and Kelly and Beyonce? No. Did she go into deep detail about the car accident? No. But she did talk about the impact that it had on her afterwards. And finally, did she disclose what was on the note from Whitney? No. But what she did give was a glimpse into her struggles as a child star growing up and navigating this thing called life. She takes us from her childhood summers in Macomb, Mississippi, spending time with her grandparents, all the way up to her Broadway debut. But she does mention how Romeo ended up wearing an eye patch, her being in a verbally disrespectful relationship, her pregnancy, her sibling bond with Ray J, the onset tension with Thea, her relationships with Monica and Aaliyah, and her never ending admiration and love for Whitney. Also, fun fact, with Never Say Never being one of my favorite albums, and I have played that album repeatedly for almost 30 years. I never realized that the damn song titles were actually cliches. She literally picked up a book called Dictionary of Cliches and started brainstorming. 30 years later, and I was today years old. So, if I had to rate this, I'd give it 5 stars. I usually only do 4 stars to keep my rating simple, but Phases is deserving of a 5 star rating. So I would recommend this to any Brandy fan, any millennial who has had her albums on repeat, and any person who likes celebrity memoirs. But if you're looking for a super deep tell all that plays in the mud with the likes of Shine and Mace, you are not going to get it. So just keep that in mind. But I want to hear from you. Have you read Phases yet? And if you have, what did you think about it? Also, please drop some celebrity memoirs down in the comments that I should read next. I have already read memoirs by Britney Spears, Will Smith, Kamala Harris, and Tina Knowles. All right, you guys, so this brings us to the end of this video. Please don't forget to like and share and subscribe. Also, please follow me on Robin's Reading Nest on TikTok, Instagram, and the Storygraph. I want to thank you guys for visiting Robin's Reading Nest today, where birds of a feather read together. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.